I may use a toaster for a tripod, but at least the lighting's decent. I'm also probably gonna be wearing the same sweatshirt in a lot of videos. I have a story for you guys. I'm gonna tell you a really quick pointless story before we get into this scary story, because I have another scary story for you guys. So the room that I'm staying in at my dad's house is my brother's room, because we kind of like kicked my brother out of the house so that I could come and stay in his room while I visit Arizona. But his room is like at the very back of the house, and for some reason his room is just freezing cold all the time. And so every morning, well, pretty much every single day, I don't even want to get out of the bed because I'm so fucking cold. Like, I sleep in a sweatshirt and leggings. These are just like very small stupid problems. But basically I haven't changed out of this sweatshirt because I'm too cold to change out of it. I'm too cold to take my shirt off. So we're gonna wear the same sweatshirt in all of our videos. Who cares? It's not mine. I stole it, but that's okay. But I have another scary story for you guys. This story has a lot of parts. A lot of you guys have been wanting me to read a longer one, but you're gonna be a little bit angry with me for this video. I'm just gonna read the first 2 parts to the story. I wanna say there's like 8 parts to it. Here's my reasoning for only wanting to read so little. Just stay with me here. When it comes to these longer stories, first of all, I want to make sure that you guys are interested in the storyline and you guys want to hear the rest of the story. I know that's lame, and I know you guys always yell at me and you're like, of course we want to hear the rest of it, but I just like to make sure. I'm also in Arizona right now, and this is my fault. This is 100% my fault. I should have pre-recorded before I got here, but I didn't because, you know, the whole unmotivated thing, and then motorcycles. Not right now. Buses, trucks, fuck me. So I don't want to spend a lot of my time recording and editing when I could be with my family and with my friends. So I'm gonna read the first 2 parts now. So hopefully that'll be, it'll be a decently long video. Like, it'll be like the same as all the other ones. And then when I get back to Texas, I'll do the rest of it in like 2 parts, and I'll try to do them like back to back, not make you guys wait a week. I'll figure something out, okay? Just like sorry, but not sorry. So as always, I will have the author link down below as well as the story. So if you guys want to go read it on your own, or if you guys want to read ahead for any reason, you guys don't want to wait for me, or if you guys want to read along. So I'll have everything linked down below. And this story is called My Dad Told Me to Never Go Into the Basement. Don't go into the basement. Those are the words my dad told me every night before I went to sleep. He would tuck the sheets around my body, kiss my forehead, and tell me he loves me. Then, as he stood up and went close to the door, he would whisper, "Don't go into the basement." I remember looking at him, his massive frame cutting a silhouette in the doorway as the light from the hallway went past him and died in the darkness of my bedroom. Don't go into the basement. The first time he said it, I wasn't even sure I heard him right. I thought maybe I was already asleep, dreaming words that had never been spoken. I asked him the next morning at the table. My mother standing at the sink washing dishes, my brother furiously finishing his homework, my father leering at me with his dark blue eyes, his brow furrowed. He would just shake his head. I was in no hurry to go into the basement before he ever told me not to. The basement stairs were inside the house. The dark wooden steps cut deep into the guts of our living room. One side of the staircase was concrete and rock, the part of earth it had torn into. Cobwebs littered various corners of the stairs. There were many days where I would stand on top of the stairs, looking down. I remember seeing a piece on the television about underwater cave divers. I saw one diver squeeze into a pitch-black crevice, one so tight he had to take the oxygen tank off of his back. I could only imagine the intense pressure, the suffocating cold and darkness. I stood on top of those stairs, feeling like the diver, staring into a dark abyss, shivering. There was no door on the bottom of the stairs, only darkness. The kind of complete and utter blackness where your eyes would struggle and fail to find anything they could cling on to. I knew there were no windows in the basement since none could be found on the outside of the house. But this darkness had always felt different. I would stare into it for what felt like hours. Sometimes my dad would find me swaying back and forth on top of the stairs. He wouldn't say anything, just take my hand and lead me away. One night I had the most intense dream. I was rock climbing, scaling a mountain wall. Except it wasn't really climbing. I was being thrown upwards into the wall, smashing against the cliff face. I was scraping my skin, blood being thrown against the mountainside. My bones were breaking as they started to burst out from underneath my muscles. I looked up and screamed with horror when I saw that the mountain never ended. It just jutted up into the sky as far as I could see. The next morning my dad told me he had caught me sleepwalking. I was halfway down the basement stairs when he found me and started shaking me viciously on my shoulders, started slapping my face, anything to wake me up. Eventually he had to carry me back to bed and hold me down for an hour before I fell asleep again. Don't go into the basement. He started saying it in the mornings too. Over the running faucet in the kitchen sink, he would whisper into my ear, "Don't go into the basement." I would look back at him, expecting a grin, a wink, a nod, anything. He would just look away and go back to reading his newspaper, milk dripping out of his mouth as he took a big slobbering mouthful of cereal, like he hadn't said anything. I was in the house alone when I went into the basement. My father was out, not expecting to be back until the morning. My brother was gone, off into the real world. I hadn't seen my mother for years. I'd been watching television, hitting the mute button to cut off a commercial. In the silence that followed, someone called out my name from inside the house. I dismissed it at first, laughing to myself at my wild imagination. I put the sound back on and pumped up the volume. Everything was fine for a few seconds. Then the power cut off. The day's light had only just begun to fade, so I wasn't plunged into total darkness. I ran upstairs to grab a flashlight, but by the time I came back down, the whole house was nearly pitch black. Living off the main road, I couldn't rely on streetlights for illumination, so within minutes, I was forced to turn on the battery-powered mag light my dad had given me for my birthday that year. I peeked out a window and saw my neighbor's lights were on, so I knew the power was only out at our house. I sat down on a kitchen chair and did the math in my head. My dad wasn't going to be home until morning, at least 12 hours from now. The batteries in my flashlight were small and unlikely to last for more than a few of those hours. I could live without the light. My concern was the fridge and the freezer. If I didn't open the door to either, I could keep the cold air in, but they were old appliances and poorly insulated. The food probably had 5 or 6 hours before it spoiled in the hot summer air. I was going to have to get the power back on myself by going to the circuit breaker. I knew enough that I figured one of the breakers had been flipped, so it was simply a matter of finding it and flipping it back on. Easy enough. I'd never done it before, but I knew the theory behind it. And if that didn't solve the problem, clearly this was a bigger issue that needed professional help. As I stood up, I realized I had missed one important detail and my blood ran cold. The circuit breaker was in the basement. My knees became wobbly. I was short of breath. In the span of a few seconds, my mind was fighting a civil war between the side that knew I had to get the power back on and the side that was screaming at me to never go into that basement. Before I could stop myself, I was at the top of the basement stairs. The beam of my flashlight cut through the black and revealed each worn-out staircase, but no light could penetrate past the doorway. Curiosity and rebellion took over momentarily. Why couldn't I go down there? I put my foot down on the first step and stopped. Physically couldn't move any further, frozen in perpetual fear. Sweat was dripping off of my forehead, some hitting the top of the flashlight and casting small shadows across the beam. I shook my head and decided there and then that the food would be damned. There was no way I was going down there. Then, from out of the basement, someone called my name. I think I fainted. I say think because the next thing I remember was the taste of dust, the feel of cold concrete, utter and total darkness, throbbing pain coming from my knees and head and neck. Only a few seconds were needed in order for me to realize I'd fallen down the stairs. My flashlight had turned off or had broken in the fall. I tried to push down the panic and fear that was quickly rising in my chest. I was on my stomach, so I moved my arms and hands around my body in case my flashlight was near me, but to no avail. I panicked more. I tried to will my eyes to reveal something to me, a shape, a wall, anything. I pushed myself slowly off the cold floor, holding my breath and listening for even the slightest movement. An eternal few seconds passed while I tried to quiet the ringing in my head, courtesy of my tumble down the stairs. I mustered the courage to lift my arms and began the agonizing search for the only light available to me. A solitary light bulb with a hanging chain that I had to pull to turn on. I knew it was battery powered. I'd seen my dad do it a few times when the power cut out during a storm. I would watch him from the top of the stairs as he walked down. He disappeared from sight, and I would count the seconds it took him to turn the light on. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. The air tasted cold and musty, like rotted cardboard. I waved my arms a foot above my head, slowly circling outwards into the room. I just brushed against something that felt like metal when I heard quick and ragged noises, like wind escaping a tunnel. I froze. Somebody was breathing. 1 Mississippi. I dared to whisper. Some semblance of a voice escaped my lips, so quiet the sound died a few feet in front of me in the cold air. Hello? 2 Mississippi. The breathing noises stopped and I swallowed in the silence. 3 Mississippi. My arm was right above my head, stuck since fear had cut my brain and body from each other. Then something hard and cold touched my hand. I was too scared to scream. My hand shrunk back, my fingers tightening around a light bulb chain. I pulled down hard and quick. The light that came on was brilliant and overwhelming, blinding me momentarily. As my eyes closed, somebody laughed. I screamed then, opened my eyes and screamed harder. There were dozens of people in the basement with pale, featureless skin. They were standing completely still, and I kept screaming. I was waiting for something to happen. In my nightmares, the people in the basement simply opened their arms and I'm sucked into a black abyss, my bones crushed and my skin ripped apart. I must have screamed for a minute or two, and nothing happened. not a sound in the air except my wails. I stopped screaming, took a few deep breaths, focused my eyes and looked at the people closer. I would have laughed if my heart and lungs didn't feel like they had been torn out of my body. Mannequins and statues. Most had been covered with a white sheet. There had to be almost 20 of them in that one square room. They were scattered amongst a few shelves that were carrying lumber. There was one statue in front of a small desk that was my dad's workshop. A few mannequins had been squeezed between a furnace and a water heater. There was about 5 in front of the circuit breaker. I let out a small sigh of relief when I saw it. I could see one switch had been flipped off, causing the power outage. I took one step towards the breaker and I saw one of the white sheets move, turning a head towards me. I screamed again and in my panic ripped the sheet off. Breathed out when it was only a statue. Fear and panic were causing me to see things and hear things, just my overactive imagination. Cursing to myself, I took a deep breath and flipped the switch on the breaker. I saw the lights go on upstairs and smiled for the first time all night. Then I heard someone whisper into my ear. I felt hot breath. Don't come into the basement. The next thing I remember was my dad shaking me. I was sprawled out on the basement floor. I looked into his eyes. He seemed older than the last time I saw him. Weathered, like a stone in the desert that had been chipped away by the winds of 1,000 years. I started to cry. He didn't say anything. He just picked me up in his strong arms and took me to bed. When I woke up the next morning, my dad was sitting on the end of the bed. He might have been sitting there all night for all I knew. He just looked back at me for what felt like hours. I stared right back at him. I couldn't wrap my head around what had happened in the basement. A long time passed before he spoke. He took my hand, looked into my eyes. I'd never seen him look so sad before. Even when Mom left, he held it together. Maybe not in private, but in front of my brother and I, he was as stoic as they come. In front of me, on my bed that morning, my dad cried. Then he told me we were moving. That was 10 years ago. My dad and I never talked about that night. In fact, my dad and I rarely talk these days. He doesn't like email or cell phones, and I live very far away from where he is now. Years have gone by since the last time I saw him. Today, however, I received an envelope from him. My name and address were handwritten by him on the front. I opened it, and a letter fell out. There were only a few words on a single sheet of paper. I read them over and over again, hands shaking. Meet me in the basement. Actually, I'm gonna stop right there because I feel like that's a really good intro to this entire story, and I think it's funny to leave you guys on a cliffhanger. Well, it's not even funny because I leave myself on a cliffhanger as well. So I'm actually gonna end it there. So if you guys want to hear the rest of the story, let me know, and I will try to figure out a way where I can do like uploads back to back so you guys aren't waiting so long for all of these stories. But I'm going to cut this up into different parts. This is gonna be like Jack and Lucy all over again, where it was literally like a 5-part series, but I love that story. And this one, I can already tell this is gonna be a really good fucking story. But I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any other stories you want me to read, go ahead and send them to me. I always have my social media link down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye. I know you guys are gonna hate me for this, but I kind of get joy out of it. I get a little bit of pleasure. I get a little bit of pleasure out of it, not gonna lie. So we're gonna wait. We're gonna be patient and we're gonna wait together because I have to wait too. Alrighty, see ya.